Hey, good morning, Liberty Hill Church family. So glad that you're here to worship with us today. I just want to take these next few moments and tell you about some things that are going on here in the life of our church. The first is that the kids ministry meeting that was scheduled for today, right after service, has been canceled, and we're going to give you some more info in the days ahead on when that meeting will appear on the calendar at a later date. The next thing is that our students are going snow tubing on February the 10th. That's a Saturday. We're going to meet here at the church at 8 o'clock. We'll leave from here and go to Scaly Mountain, North Carolina, and we'll tube for about 2 hours. We'll come back and find lunch on our way home, and parents will coordinate pickup sometime around when we stop for lunch so you can come and get your child from the church here at Liberty Hill. The next day, on the 11th, is our chili cook-off, and I've been talking about this a lot. I'm excited for it. I hope that you are. It's a great time of fellowship and food and fun and some friendly competition, so you don't want to miss. Men, go ahead, pull out your phone, navigate to the Church Center app. When you open the app, go all the way to the right-hand side at the bottom, click those dots, and go to the More section. And under the More section, you'll find sign-ups, and that's where you can sign up for our chili cook-off. So go ahead, do me a favor right now, pull out your phone and sign up. And while you have your phone out, if you haven't already signed up for our marriage conference on the 17th, you do not want to miss this time. Couples in our church, I promise you, this is not something that you want to let slip out of your grasp. You want to be here, you want to learn, you want to grow with us as God is going to stretch us as we seek to love our spouses and to lead our families. So don't miss out on that opportunity. The cost is $50 per couple or $25 a person, and that includes some really cool stuff, and even we're working really hard right now to make sure that everybody walks away with something awesome. So pull out your phone, go to the Church Center app, and sign up for both of those things if you haven't already. But let's continue now in worship.
Y'all look good today. It's good to see you. There's been a lot going on this week with the fast and everything. I can't wait to get your testimonies in. So when you have one, let us know, because then we want to let the people know, because we want to let you know that this thing is not in vain, that what you're doing is real and it works. And I have one myself in a year and a half ago in August of 2022. I went to my regular doctor for just a regular physical, regular blood work. And I don't know, 3 or 4 hours later, the doctor office called and said, report to Northeast Georgia Medical Center, don't delay. And I thought, well, I didn't know anything about kidney function. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. For any of you that do, my creatinine was 5.05 and my GFR was 11. And I was in kidney failure and had no idea, actually. And so, you know, we asked people to pray for us, and they did, and it started to come up. And, you know, the doctor said that after 6 months, that'll be your new baseline. That's probably where your kidneys are going to stay. So it was in the 30s. My GFR was. Creatinine was over 2 still, but I thought, you know, heck, you can live with that. And then we started this fast this week, and ironically, I was joking with Cody, and I said, I don't know if this Daniel fast does anything or not. It's not that hard, and I don't feel like it's effective. Cody, without ever wavering in his faith, goes, worked out pretty good for Daniel. You know? and so I went to the doctor Thursday, and my creatinine is normal, y'all. My kidneys are normal. And I'm amazed. I'm just amazed. I told the doctor, I said, I thought you said it wasn't going to get better after 6 months. And she said, well, we thought there was a lot of scar tissue, but apparently it was just inflammation. I thought it was just God. So I want to share that with you. The fast does work. That's the first of many testimonies, I think, that's going to come out of this. And I can't wait to hear yours. Now, we're going to talk about giving today. So this is not going to be a whole lot of amens. I know. I'm okay with that. But I'm going to tell you what God's laid on my heart. Just a month ago, you can go ahead and turn to 2 Corinthians 8, by the way. Just about a month ago, we went through what we call the giving season. But I believe the giving season should be all year. In 2 Corinthians 8, Paul is sending a letter to the church of Corinth, and he says, this is 15 verses long, so I got to tell the story though, and then we'll break them down. Now I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, that God in his kindness, or what God in his kindness has done through the churches in Macedonia. Now they're being tested by many troubles. Now listen to this wording, and they are very poor. But they're also filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. For I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more. They did it of their own free will. They begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. They did even more than we had hoped, for their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to. So we have urged Titus, who encouraged your giving in the first place, to return to you and encourage you to finish this ministry of giving, since you excel in so many ways. In your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love from us, I want you to excel also in this gracious act of giving. Now, I'm not commanding you to do this, but I'm testing how genuine your love is by comparing it to the eagerness of other churches. You know the generous grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty he could make you rich. Now here's my advice. It would be good for you to finish what you started a year ago. Now last year you were the first who wanted to give, and you were the first to begin doing it, but now you should finish what you started. Let the eagerness that you showed in the beginning be matched now by your giving. Give in proportion to what you have. Whatever you give is acceptable if you give it eagerly, and give according to what you have, not what you don't have. Of course, I don't mean your giving should make life easy for others and hard for yourselves. I only mean that there should be some equality. Right now, you have plenty and can help those who are in need. Later, they will have plenty and share it with you when you need it. And in this way, things will be equal. As the scriptures say, those who gathered a lot had nothing left over, and those who gathered only a little had enough. You ever been in bed trying to sleep and a smoke detector has a low battery? That chirp that he does, it drives me crazy. I can't stand it. I can't sleep through it. I can't ignore it. And it's awful. My house is fairly new. It was built in 2019, so all the new regulations on smoke detectors were in place, and I've got like 26 smoke detectors in the house, and this thing's chirping, and I'm trying to figure out which one it is. Now, you got to find, I'm on a mission, y'all. I'm focused. I'm telling you, I got a broom handle in my hand. I'm going to knock it off the ceiling if I have to, but I'm going to stop this thing from chirping. It's the middle of the night because it never does it in the daytime. You ever noticed? It'll never do it in the daytime. You sitting there sleeping, and when that thing chirps, it's that sound. It's just, you remember them cartoons where the guy levitates in the bed about 2 feet high? You know, that's the way I feel. I can't take it. So I jump out of bed, and I'm looking for this smoke detector. Problem is, it don't chirp all the time. It chirps every 10 minutes. So I'm waiting on it. I don't even know what floor it's on. I just know it's somewhere. And so you have no idea which one it is, but I'm on a mission to find this chirping smoke detector. And then Michelle says, you need to get back into bed. And I said, you need to submit because I'm on a mission. That's definitely a joke, by the way. But there's something about that particular sound that drives me crazy. It makes me jump out of bed like I was snake bit. But what's the alternative? Unplug them all. So knock them all off the ceiling. So if we do have a fire, I put my wife's life at stake. That's not really an alternative. But I want to tie this thing into giving a little bit, because I can hear you thinking, I love the Lord. I love my church. I came here to worship and to fellowship with my church family, and I didn't come here to hear you talk to me about my money. It's a little awkward. It's a little wonky. It's a little bit like you chirping while I'm trying to sleep, you know. But let me ask you, what's the alternative? Isn't money the central thing in our human existence? Isn't it? I mean, it's always on our mind. And if it's not on your mind, it's on your spouse's mind, and the fact that it's not on your mind drives your spouse nuts. You never think about money. I have faith, honey. You don't have faith, you can't do math. That might have been a little part of my real life there. Little, based on a true story. So So money is a very considerable part of our lives, and God cares about that. So if this sermon feels a little wonky, and if it feels like a smoke detector going off in your head, then remember the alternative. Are we going to ignore the things that we think about all the time? I mean, are we going to not talk about money and not talk about sex and other things because it makes us feel uncomfortable, it makes us feel awkward? I love God because the stuff that means the most to us, he talks about it. You know, he has a plan for sex. He has a plan for money. He has a plan for all these things that make us feel awkward and uncomfortable. But there's a practice by many scholars that's much smarter than me that says the more time God spends on a subject, the more time you should spend on the subject. If he spends a lot of time on grace, then so should we. If he spends a lot of time on forgiveness, then we should spend a lot of time on forgiveness. And in this portion of Scripture, Paul is writing his second letter to the church of Corinth. Now, he had a great relationship with this church, as was evidenced in 1 Corinthians. If you read 1 Corinthians, Paul's all lovey-dovey with the church at Corinth, but something happened between 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians, and the relationship has started to break down. People have been saying mean and untrue things about Paul. You get a church leader, and people still going to talk about him. A great pastor, an apostle, and people talk about him and just break him down. So glad things have changed so much in 2,000 years. Paul may not be all he says he is. I think Paul just wants our money. Paul's just out for himself. And you couldn't post a tweet back then to correct the error, so he has to write a letter. Well, it takes a while for this letter to circulate. So by the time this letter finally finds its way to the church at Corinth, there was a lot of animosity among the people. And this letter was meant to defend himself against these things. Now, if I was at odds with Pastor Cody and we were trying to work things out, it would be a really weird time for me to ask for money. Like, we good? Yeah, I mean, we good. You got some cash? You know? Yet Paul dedicates 2 out of 13 chapters to money. He even risked relationship to talk about money. And he starts with a praise report about the Macedonians. He said, boy, you heard about them? Have you heard about these Macedonians? Man, they heard about the persecution in Jerusalem, and they begged to help. Verse 2 says they were being tested by many troubles, and they were very poor, but they were also filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. We didn't hear that. They were very poor, going through many troubles, yet they were filled with abundant joy, which overflowed in rich generosity. They sound like aliens from a place that's not real. Who does this? Very poor. ESV says that extreme poverty. Yet they had abundant joy. Rich generosity flowed out of them. Listen to the words. The Bible can't exaggerate. That would be an error. Many troubles. Very poor. Wealth and generosity. Don't make sense. It just don't make sense. So how do I line up with this verse? I mean, some of us think if we don't get a door spot on Black Friday that there's not a God. But these people had many troubles, many afflictions. I mean, I've been through afflictions. I went to the dentist a couple of months ago. Talk about afflictions. I need gas. I need Novocaine. I need somebody to stand in the gap and pray. I don't do well with dentists. But these people here, according to verse 4, they begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. Is it okay if I dream of a church who begs to give? Because it's an honor, and favor is going to follow me if I dare to be a blessing to other people. In verse 3, it says, for I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more, and they did it of their own free will. Generosity is not based on affordability. Affordability has its place. It really does. If I'm going to buy a truck, a piece of furniture, whatever, affordability is very important. But when it comes to generosity, affordability is not in the equation. When the prosperity gospel first started back in the 80s, people were encouraged to swipe a credit card and trust God. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Macedonians said that we can do this much, but we're going to do this much. Generosity is not consulting affordability. I'm not suggesting that you give so much that you hurt your family, and there's going to be times when God asks for a sacrificial gift. There's been times when God asked me for a certain amount, and I remember telling him, that's all I got. and in which I felt him tell me, that's all I asked for. And when Michelle and I pray about giving, then we're always going to go with the higher number that we come up with because we figure that's God. Because the devil's never going to say, give more. Paul said, I didn't ask them to do that. I would never ask them to do that. They're broke. They don't have it. But they beg me. So generosity is not based on affordability. It's based on obedience. But how do you explain this? How do you explain this generosity that they had? Well, in verse 5, it says, they even did more than we had hoped, for their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. So the first giving is giving yourself to the Lord and not reserving one thing from him. In verse 6, it says, so we urge Titus, who encouraged your giving in the first place, to return to you and encourage you to finish this ministry of giving. Since you excel in so many ways, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, your love from us, I want you to excel in this gracious act of giving. What explains their generosity, y'all, is that they'd given themselves completely to God. They'd given themselves completely to God. The primary giving is when we offer ourselves to God, which is a reasonable sacrifice. And this other thing you do just flows. I wanted to call this sermon that other thing you do, but Tony wouldn't put it on the thing. But this other thing just flows. When you give God everything except for this, God, I trust you. I'll give you everything, but I'm going to hang on to this. You trust him with your soul, and you don't trust what he says about money? Are you robbing God? Yeah, but you're robbing yourself too. You know, you can do whatever you want. It's yours. It's your money. You don't have to give time. You don't have to give talent. You don't have to get treasure. And this church is going to be just fine. We're not trying to get anything from you. We're trying to get something for you. And I'm telling you that this lifestyle works. And if you'll trust God to do what he says, he will work for you too. It just will. But when you give your whole self to God, which is reasonable for the one who gave you everything, when you do that, you give yourself completely to him, and that other thing you do, or the money, the giving just flows. Because you can't be a dedicated Christian and not give because it's not in your DNA. For God so loved the world, he gave. If we're Christian, we're Christ-like. We can't live this life without giving. When you meet a truly generous person, there's something attractive about that person. He's like, I don't know what it is about you, but I need to be your friend. Because they're just fun to be around. They're generous. Have you ever seen a scenario where that wasn't true? Oh no, hide. Why? There she comes again. What's wrong with her? So generous, so kind. Prepare yourself. No, the opposite is true. We don't do that. And I wonder if that's part of the plan for Jesus people. I wonder if part of the plan is for us to be so generous that we're attractive to other people and we can spread this gospel and get it all over the world and just flow in order to be more attractive. I heard a story about a missionary. I read it this week. It was a missionary that came to, well, he was out west before we settled out west, and it was when the Native Americans were first being reached with the gospel. And this missionary comes in and he starts telling the story of Jesus and how rich he was in heaven, and he had everything, and he was the Son of God, and he laid down everything in heaven to become nothing on earth. And the chief took his headdress and all the other stuff that they used, and he laid it down on the altar. He said, Jesus, give up everything. I give up things. And then the missionary went on to tell how Jesus came to earth, and he didn't have a home, but he went all over the place spreading the gospel. And the chief went and got his teepee and everything in it, and he laid it down on the altar, and he said, Jesus, give everything. I give my home. And then he said that he went on preaching about how Jesus was tortured and he was murdered on a cross, and like the thief on the cross, whoever will accept him, he will be their God. And the chief went up and laid himself down on the altar, and he said, Jesus, give himself, I give myself. What if we took the word literally? What if we really took what Jesus said about giving and we actually believed it and it became a part of your life? And can you imagine what would happen? It's only reasonable. But it starts with me giving me. And then he comes at you with a thing like tithing. He says, Old Testament standard is 10%. We got to put a standard somewhere. So 10%. And we're going to sit here and split hairs over 10%. Y'all, I owe him everything. And whatever amount he wants, I'll give it to him because I owe him everything. Verse 12 says, whatever you give is acceptable if you give it eagerly. And give according to what you have, not what you don't have. And that's the reason why generosity and affordability don't go together. Because generosity is the same for everybody. Because it's not based on a number. It's based on forgiveness. It's based on how much you believe God. It's based on what you have. So if you say, once I have it, I'm going to give it, that statement is in error, sir. Because it's not based on a number. We're commanded to give based on what we have, not what we one day may get. And this is how you change the world. But this is how it starts with your family. And it starts today. I'm not sitting here trying to, get you all hyped up to give a bigger offering. We've already took it. I'm telling you this so that you can make this a lifestyle. And it will change your world. It's one of the spiritual disciplines that we've talked about this month. And it seems to be the hardest. Some of y'all would rather not eat for a week and give $20. Generosity starts now. The Macedonians didn't wait. Verse 15 says, as the scriptures say, those who gathered a lot had nothing left over, and those who had a little, or gathered only a little, had enough. Now, this is a reference to Exodus 16. And the children of Israel out in the wilderness, and the story goes like this every morning. The people of Israel would unzip their tents. And I guess they didn't have zippers. That's a complete heresy. It's They got out of their tent. However they got out of it, they got out of their tent and they went outside and they brought their little pot and they gathered manna every morning. And, same thing the next day. And it was the same thing the next day. And the same thing the next day. For 40 years, they gathered manna, and it was there every morning. You want to see how passionate God is about trusting him for your resources and your finance? For 40 years, he said, I'm going to feed them lunch, and I'm going to feed them dinner. And his only stipulation was that you only get enough for today. Now, I don't want you to think that God's against saving or retirement or any of that. He's not. Just a few years before this, he used Joseph to save the entire nation of Israel through saving. So he's not against saving, but he's for faith. And if you get more than you need, it'll rot. And the worms will get in it, and it'll stink. And every morning, he wanted his people to come out, I believe. I believe he wanted his people to come out and experience community. Because this had to be a social event. We can't get around each other without being a social event. You come out every morning, hey, Frank, what's going on? Stuff ain't bad. My wife's got a couple new recipes for this stuff. and they did that every single morning for 40 years. And then they would bring that pot in, and the kids would go, what's that, Dad? Manna, son. Where'd it come from? Came from God. How old is God? How kids are. But they got a chance to explain to their kids where everything comes from and where all their provision comes from, their resources. And they taught their children about faith. And for 40 years, God taught his children about faith. Their financial status would change dramatically when they got into the promised land. But before he changed their finances, he changed their faith. He changed the way of looking at things, their worldview, their attitudes. And some of you, I guess you can come on up, Tony, when you want to. But if I may prophesy for just a minute to somebody in this building, some of you have been promised something. Maybe it's from your parents, your grandparents, but you're going to be the one that's going to enter in. You've been busy eating Frosted Flakes, but your time is coming. You've been wondering why you've been getting tested so much here lately, but don't despise small beginnings. He's been teaching and training you for what lies ahead. And you remember what you've been through, because when things turn around and you're living in a land of plenty, then you need to remember it's the same God who led you through the wilderness and supplied just enough to get you through. And that's the same God that's going to walk with you when things change. And it all culminates in faith. The same God, y'all, that was sitting with me on that hospital bed a year and a half ago is the same God that was with me in that doctor's office Thursday. He's the same God. He's up and down. No matter what, he's still God. He's still good. He's still awesome. And it all culminates with faith. Generosity starts now, not when I get there. I'm going to trust God every day. I'm going to trust him every day. And when people say, where's this coming from? It's from God. He's done it again. I went out this morning and he did it again. God wanted the Macedonians to be taken care of, so the church at Jerusalem took care of them later. And you couldn't find one person who didn't have their bills paid. I'm not saying they was all driving Bentleys, but nobody needed anything. Pastor Cody talked Wednesday night about the redwood trees and about how their roots are all connected together and how they can even be dead for many, many years, but they won't fall because the other trees hold them up because of their root system. God wants to do miracles in this house, and he already has. And if everybody starts giving, what if everybody started giving? And our roots became so interconnected that we would hold each other up. Man, when you're going through something, we're there for you. When I'm going through something, you're there for me. We're so interconnected, we can't fall. We can provide ministries to this area and beyond that we hadn't even thought of yet. And then people all around here is going to say, look what the Lord has done. Look what he's doing over there. It's not the big giving of a few. It's the sacrifice of everybody that says, God, I trust you. It's not so you can give and have nothing. It's the divine economy. It don't work that way. Give and it'll be given back. Press down, shaken together, running over will men give to you. That's in red, y'all. That's a promise from Jesus himself. It has to work. All you got to do is believe it. And I'm believing this is a house of miracles, not just physical, but every kind of miracle. We're going to give away a lot of money for the kingdom of God. We're going to do whatever we got to do to reach people. It's our mission, y'all. It's what we're supposed to do. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What he did for them, he'll do for us. What he can get through you, he'll get to you. Y'all forgive me if you've heard this story before, but I'm going to close with this. I know a lot of you have, but maybe some of you hadn't. The year was 2009. The country was in the middle of the Great Recession. And being in the concrete business, we were the target. Now, to preface this, I was heavily involved in youth ministry at the time at the church I was attending, and the youth pastor would come up to me a lot and say, you know, will you go on this trip? And I'd tell him, no, I'm 3 months behind, man. I can't get caught up. I can't go. And then one day, I started hearing about Fannie and Freddie. I had no clue who that was. Housing bubbles and all kind of crazy stuff, stock markets crashing, and then all of a sudden, my phone stopped ringing. It was like you cut a spigot off. For those of you that were around then, it was like it stopped. And I went to work at Walmart at night because I didn't want to bankrupt. I didn't want to screw the people that had been good to me. And I had a key to my church at the time, and I'd walk in there every night at 2 o'clock in the morning on my supper break, and I'd go to the altar and I'd pray. I said, God, if you'll give me my business back, I won't use it again as an excuse. Because God can make you not busy. And I remember looking at the books one day, and our marriage, we were well into our marriage. We were probably close to 10 years in, but we hadn't been tested. Not really. And I didn't know how Michelle was going to respond. I really didn't. And I remember looking at the books and looking at them and trying to find ways to make things work. And I remember going to her and saying, we might lose everything. So there's never been a time when I could not work more and get more, but there's nothing to do. And then I waited on her to crush me because I couldn't support my family. I felt that tall. And I waited on her to, like I say, just grind me to powder. I'll never forget it. She said, Dave, if we lose it, we'll get it back. It's just stuff. She said, do you believe this stuff that you preach? And I said, I don't know what I believe. She said, why don't you get off your knee, or why don't you get off your butt and get on your knees and pray us out of this? I went on a fast. And I prayed a lot. And I remember writing a check and taking it to one of our pastors. And I said, here. He said, you don't have this. I said, that's not going to pay a bill that I've got. I said, but I'm going to give my way out of this. He said, you sure? I said, either you believe it or you don't. And I believe it. We were 30 days from bankruptcy and got the Kaiser Permanente building in Athens. It was a pretty large commercial job, and it bailed us out. I don't like God's timing all the time. I wish he'd do it a little bit before 30 days out. But he's faithful. He's faithful. I know Michael's story. I know a lot of his story. It just happened. But you keep giving, and you keep trusting, you keep praying, and watch God be God. After all, this is the only thing in the entire Bible where he said, where he double dog dares you. He said, test me on this. Bring your tithe to the storehouse. See if I won't open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that you don't have room to receive. That principle continues into the New Testament with the verse that I quoted a while ago about giving will be given back to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. We got a really cool and big God, y'all. And he can take care of your bills. He wants to give you the desires of your heart. He says, fear not, little flock. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So I challenge you this morning. If you're not giving, you know, and people's got different reasons for not giving, and I get that. But don't let fear be one of them. Don't let fear be the reason, because the devil's going to keep you in fear. He's going to make sure you stay scared. He's going to give you a million reasons why you shouldn't give. I'm telling you, God's way works. It's the divine economy. And I challenge you to try it. Stand to your feet. This altar is going to be open, but I challenge you to surrender all. Surrender all. You trust him with your soul. Trust him with your checkbook. Promise it works. I've told you before, hey, if you tithe for 6 weeks and you're worse off financially than you were, we'll give you money back. I'll give you money back. I've never had to make good on that because my God's real and he promises what he promises. So, hey, I challenge you. This altar's open. Whatever, if you need healing in your body, I'm all about praying for you this morning. Trust me. if you need a financial miracle, if whatever it is you need, come on. We'd love to pray for you. Don't wait on anybody.
Hey, I'm Cody Kelly. I'm the lead pastor here at Liberty Hill Church. I just wanted to take a moment and personally thank you for taking time out of your day to join in with us and be a part of this service. We would love to connect with you moving forward. If you would, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so we can be connected from here on. And if you have a praise report, a prayer request, or if you've made a decision to make Jesus the Lord of your life, we would seriously love to hear about it. And you can connect with us and let us know about how God is working in your life through this ministry by texting the word pray to the number on the screen. If you'd like to partner with us, you can also give to this ministry financially by visiting our website, libertyhillchurch.org, and selecting give. Until next time, we can't wait to see you again.